Dígh bhí cóide agus fáilte roimh gach duine go galamh. Tá míad ag fhnú go mór leis an imeacht ar fad, chun ólas a roiint le chéile agus cadramh nua a dhéanamh. So what I've said is as Gaeilge. So I've welcomed you all very much to Galway. I've said that we're all going to share knowledge at this important event and that we're going to develop new relationships while we're all here. So you're also welcome to the 7th International Symposium on Service Learning. My name is Lorraine McElrath and I coordinate the Community Knowledge Initiative here at NUI Galway, which is a campus-wide programme whereby we create new pathways in partnership with academic staff, students and community to democratise our knowledge and to engage more cohesively with community. And I guess we're delighted to welcome all of you today because it's such an international gathering. This morning at one of the pre-conference sessions I had the opportunity to engage with new friends from Germany, the USA, South Africa, Vietnam and my own colleagues here in Ireland. And I think it is rare to get such a truly international gathering. And our aspiration over the next 3 days while you're here is to make sure you feel at home and feel very welcomed in our home. I just want to also touch on the fact that we have a group of fantastic visiting students from across Europe, from 12 different European countries. They're all wearing pinky purple t-shirts. They've been engaging on an Erasmus Plus funded 2-week study tour. They've been working with 5 community partners locally in the city. And the last plenary that will be chaired by my colleague Mariana from the University of Indianapolis will be actually organised by them, and they're going to showcase the work that they've been really dedicating themselves to over the last 2 weeks. So thank you so much for being part of the CKI family for the last 2 weeks. I'd like to thank my co-chairs, Jacob de Plessis from Stellenbosch University in South Africa and Mariana Fulkrod from the University of Indianapolis. We've been working virtually on this conference for the last year or more, so it's been absolutely fantastic to actually meet physically here today. And I'd also like to thank one of the co-founders of ISSL, Antoinette Tolkien-Smith, who will be speaking shortly. Antoinette came to visit me a couple of years ago and fell in love with this institute and asked us to host this conference, and we generously accepted the challenge and the invitation. And I'd just also like to thank my amazing Community Knowledge Initiative team, Carmel, Anya, Lorraine, Anne, Lily Kennedy, who's with us on Transition Year Experience, Patricia in the conference office at NUI Galway for making all of this happen. And I'd also like to thank our colleagues in Cafe Sale who have and will continue to provide food and nourishment over the next 3 days. Now, we're located in a very special building. This is the Institute for Life Course and Society. It's just 2.5 years old. It's a very special building in that it was built in mind for community university engagement. Everyone who is housed within this institute works in partnership with community, engaging knowledge, creating new knowledge to better the lives of people in community and society. We work on practical change issues as well as policy change issues and the development of new knowledge for social change. And maybe just to touch on who gave us significant funding for this was an Irish-American philanthropist who was born in the 1920s. Chuck Feeney is his name. And he went on, after graduating from Cornell University, to invent the duty-free system of shopping. So every shop in the world, from Berlin to Barcelona to Sydney, were all once his possession. And then he sold all of his shops in the early 1980s and became a full-time philanthropist. So he's given significant funding to higher education in Ireland and to the peace process in Northern Ireland as well. And really he has a huge legacy in terms of creating positive social change on the island of Ireland. So we have him in the main to thank for this new building. So I sometimes describe myself as a campus cartographer, and I'm in the throes of wrapping up my own doctoral thesis, and it's actually the title of my thesis, because I feel I'm in the business of creating new maps between the university and the community. I think cartographers are people who are typically cognizant of culture and context. They're sensitive to landscape and typography. They're sensitive to people and place, to existing routes and to new possibilities, the environment and sustainability, to history, the present and the future, and the nature of community in all of its guises. And it's with this theme in mind that the painting on your book of abstracts and on your name tag has been chosen as kind of the visual theme for this conference. The painting doesn't actually have a name, it's untitled. It's by a female Irish artist called Evie Hahn, and she was born in the late 1900s, and she's responsible for bringing modernist, cubist, abstract painting to Ireland. She was born in Dublin, and she was a pioneer in that she did bring this form of art to Ireland. Many of her works are untitled, and she tried to create mystery in her paintings so as to engage the viewer, and so that the viewer could interpret the work rather than her offering prescription to the viewer. And her work has been described as spontaneous. And this painting actually resides in my president's dining room. So we got a photographer to take a picture of it for the cover of the Book of Abstracts and for this conference. And I guess I feel there's much resonance between that painting and who we are gathered here today. So I feel that we're all pioneers and we're finding new ways to connect and democratise knowledge and to create new knowledge through engagement. And we create mystery too as we lead students towards community and the community towards the university. And sometimes we're uncertain about the consequences. So our work is ultimately spontaneous, and sometimes we have to make things up as we go along. And I'm reminded by Paulo Freire's book, We Make the Road by Walking. So our work also in service learning is far from prescriptive. It can be uncertain, it can be risky, and it can promote an inquisitive approach to learning and knowledge. That's a quote from my colleague Anya. Thank you, Anya, for that lovely quote. So I hope over the next 3 days we'll make a new road by walking, and I hope that you will enjoy engaging with each other. And I thank you for making very long travel arrangements to be with us here in the west of Ireland. It's not the easiest place to get to, but it is certainly the most beautiful part of Ireland, so it's worth the journey. So I'd now like to introduce you to the president of NUI Galway, Dr. Jim Brown, who's been an advocate and a support for civic and community engagement for in excess of a decade, if not for all of his life. His commitment has been expressed in his leadership, his academic plans, his policies and his vision, and I'd like to invite him now to welcome you all. Thank you very much.
Carmagat Lorraine, a Corja, a Ina, agus Ina Specialta, White and Reduce, Fodges Felco Roiv Galer, Gujian Oakaj, Sunsuk Shaw, agus Milch Egg Sholu and Kowal and Kodal Gamleshke, Tawak Takas Tanya Shaw. For those of you who are confused, that was Irish, and this university seeks to be bilingual. It's an aspiration which we have made some progress on. It goes back to the fact that the university is located in the part of Ireland which still has a native population of Irish speakers, and the university is committed to trying to ensure that is retained in the west of Ireland, and we try insofar as we can to support teaching through Irish, research through Irish, and any initiatives which would encourage the use of the language in the wider community. So it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here this afternoon to this important conference. I'm very pleased that so many of you have come from so many different countries, from countries as disparate as South Africa, Egypt, Vietnam, the UK, Germany, United States, of course. We've lots of us in the United States here. I think it's a great tribute to your commitment to this area that you would come for a conference in this part of the world to deal with that topic. I know it's also the 7th International Symposium on Service Learning, and I know it's a collaboration between between the University of Indianapolis, Stellenbosch in South Africa, and NUI Galway. And I'm certainly very happy as NUI President, NUI Galway President, that you have decided to locate this year's symposium in this university. This university has a commitment to community which goes right back to the foundation of the university. This is a particular part of Ireland with a particular demographic in terms of a dispersed population, a particular history in terms of the being underdeveloped, frankly. If you think of Ireland and think east and west, the east part of Ireland faces towards the UK, towards the British mainland and towards Europe, and therefore is more developed, as you might expect. The western part of Ireland faces across to Boston, which is about 3,000 miles away. It's the next city on our radar. So you can imagine in that context that this part of the country is perhaps less well developed than traditionally has been less well developed. It's also very beautiful, and Lorraine is absolutely correct. This is the most beautiful part of Ireland, and I make that statement without any fear of contradiction. But it is genuinely recognised to be that, but it's also part of the beauty is that it's very rugged and therefore not particularly valuable from an agricultural point of view. So there's lots of reasons why this part of the country has had a dispersed population, and that's part of this university's commitment to ensure that we develop this part of the country and that we do it in a manner which is sensitive to our environment, both our linguistic environment, our cultural and social environment, but also brings us the very best in terms of the possibility of economic and social development. So we have been a big part of the development of the community. We go right back to the 1840s as an institution, and right throughout that time we have had that commitment. I would say that in terms of the social sciences, as a university, we are very committed to the application of social sciences in the sense that we look to do research and to promote programs which really have an impact on society in the broadest sense of the word. Many people criticise the social sciences for perhaps being very esoteric and perhaps doing research which often creates very fine papers but doesn't always lead to any impact in terms of public policy or indeed public instruments to deal with disadvantaged communities. This university does its level best, and the colleagues right across the social sciences work to ensure that the teaching and research in the social sciences lead to something in terms of application. That's not to say that it's not academic, but that is to say that we understand that strong academic activity needs to be founded on the basis of some reality, and that reality is the need to provide evidence for social policy, the need to provide evidence to decision makers and policy makers that they may develop instruments which are appropriate to dealing with the challenges that we face in civil society. Lorraine mentioned this building being facilitated by philanthropy, and that is certainly the case. But one of the major interests of that philanthropist, who was very generous to all the Irish universities, and particularly this university, was to support research that had impact. And in that context, he offered us funding for this building because of our commitment to application. And if you look at the display over there on my left and your right, you'll see a list of activities that take place in the university, and all of them have an impact. Child and Family Support, where we have UNESCO Child and Family Centre, Centre for Disability Law and Policy, Social Gerontology, clearly is about the difficulties associated with managing older populations, Community Knowledge Initiative, I'll talk about in a moment, Autism and Neurological Research Development, Health Economics and Policy Analysis. All those are issues which are clearly relevant to civil society. And I'd say the strength in all of them, and the fact that what brings them all together is a commitment to engaging with community and developing research which ultimately delivers for our community. I should also say that ILAS is a recent development, and this building is a recent development, but it captures a long history of activity in this institution. Originally there was a Social Science Research Committee here, a Research Council here, a Research Centre here, and that in fact was founded by a man who at that stage was a member of staff here, but is now President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, and his legacy and colleagues of people like Chris Curtin and himself and others of that era created that centre, created that activity, and in many ways this centre, which he formally opened some years ago, is the culmination of the work that he would have been doing in the 50s and 60s around community engagement and some modern instantiation of that. And the university is very proud of that fact that it is in effect this is a legacy in some sense of the work of the President of the country. I would also say that we are fortunate that we have a group of colleagues across a whole range of disciplines. If you look at that list, you can recognise there that there are law people, there are sociologists, there are people in the humanities associated with all these areas, psychology and so on. They all work together very, very well. That's also another characteristic of the university, that we try, insofar as we can, to promote research which is interdisciplinary and which draws on the insights of many different people. Lorraine mentioned CKI, Community Knowledge Initiative. That's something which is very important to the institution, and it expresses itself in terms of two instruments. One is service learning, which you are all engaged and interested in, and which is very important to the university, where we have persuaded many academics, and it didn't take much persuasion, to be fairness, to orient their programs in a manner which gave credit for learning by doing. Learning is learning outside the classroom, what we call real learning, not as a substitute for academic learning, but as an addition to it, which I think enriches it. And that has been embedded right across the institution. And last year, I believe 1,600 of our undergraduate students would have been involved in modules which would have a service learning component to them. And that's, as I said, really important to us. And we would regard it as a if you like, a competitive advantage in terms of students coming to this university. We also have a volunteering program here, which is allied to it, a program called ALIVE. ALIVE stands for Learning Initiative and Volunteering Experience. That program essentially rewards students, not academically, but rewards it in terms of their transcript, in terms of recognition for voluntary work in community. And that's also proved very successful. That's modelled on work done in US universities around pro bono volunteering, particularly in Notre Dame, where we in effect built the model on the basis of their model. That's something which we're also very keen on, and which sort of sits beside service learning, different to it, but not incompatible with it in terms of the commitment of students to work with community and to give something back, and giving something back to learn from it. Each year, about 1,000 students are awarded certificates for their volunteering programme, and that's something that we are also very proud of. The level of service learning and volunteering goes right across the institution. It goes from, for example, law students providing pro bono legal advice to community and voluntary organisations, students in languages supporting second-level teaching in that area, students doing homework clubs in the sciences and mathematical areas with disadvantaged communities, with students perhaps in secondary and primary schools to try to orient them towards university activity. And it always involves collaboration with external partners, which is something we also take great pride in, that the university has a capacity to work with external partners. That capacity applies right across the institution. It applies to collaboration in terms of high-tech research in areas like medtech and information technology, etc., etc. But it also applies to volunteering, where we engage significantly with a whole series of voluntary organisations in the city and beyond the city to support that. The university is also keen to engage internationally in this area. We have been heavily involved in Campus Engage, and indeed the fact that the university is hosting this your symposium would speak to the fact that we have a commitment to international development in this area, and we look beyond Galway, beyond Ireland, even beyond Europe in terms of building partnerships with other institutions, and indeed also with other organisations, to create opportunities for service learning and for civic engagement. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that you're coming to an institution which has a strong commitment to service learning, to community involvement, to community learning and researching and community engagement right across its activities. An institution where this is deeply embedded in terms of investment by the university in facilities like this, supported by philanthropy, and also in terms of our history, the nature of the west of Ireland and dispersed populations, and the reality of having had leadership here over 50 plus years in this whole area, as I say, exemplified by the commitment of the President of Ireland, Michael E. Higgins. And maybe I should conclude by referencing something he said in this university in 2016. In 2016, the university hosted the European University Association's annual rectors meeting, and we invited President Higgins to come and talk to that group. And one of the things he said was the following. Let me just quote these few words to you. As the university, in a general sense, repositions itself in a globally connected and more culturally diverse society, it must seek to deliver that creative consciousness and participatory citizenship, recognising both the positive and liberating potential of technology and the critical role of emancipatory universal learning in enabling us to connect to the possibilities of an unknown future. I think that captures particularly the notion of participatory citizenship, learning being achieved through participatory citizenship. I think that captures the essence of service learning and volunteering, and I think those are probably useful words to bear in mind as you have your symposium this week, and as you discuss the various challenges and the various opportunities associated with service learning. Could I finally thank the speakers who will come to the conference to address it in the coming days, including those on the plenary panels. Can I also thank the organisers of the event, the organisers, obviously Lorraine as the chair of this, and thank her and her colleagues for their work in organising it locally. Thank our international colleagues, Jacob Duplessis from Stellenbosch, Marianne Fougrod from the University of Indianapolis, Antoinette Smith, the co-founder of ISSL, and indeed all the CKI team in the university for the work that you've done to get this symposium off the ground. I hope you have an enjoyable time in the university. I hope you have a productive time here. I'm sure you will. What I will say to you is that this is the western end of the campus. It's the far western end of the campus. We have a campus which is quite a long, thin campus. If you have time, I would walk down through the campus and see the older part of the campus, which is about 15 minutes walk from here, all on university grounds, I hasten to add, all a pleasant walk. And you'll see the original building of the university. So if you have the chance over the next couple of days, maybe do that and get a sense of the total university. This is a particularly fine facility, but that's at one end of the university, as it were. It would be good while you are here to see the totality. I would also say the city is worth visiting, as is the wider area. This is a very beautiful part of the country, as Lorraine has said. Connemara, the Burren, south of here are very, very interesting places from a tourist point of view and from a recreational point of view, and I would urge you, while you are here, to take advantage of those. So with those few words, Gormaki as Behenshaw, to Sulgan Manishif an Salt, agus Tanyaf as an Kolat Shaw, agus Gormina Maki. Thank you very much.